talk. This is Cloud Security and Compliance, Defense in Depth with DivvyCloud. And I'm Bruce Maxfield. I'm Chief Cloud Architect with Kroger. For those of you who don't recognize the name Kroger, Kroger is the world's largest grocer. We serve many communities using a multitude of different brands. We like to be thought of as your hometown grocer. We are a Fortune 20 company, and like many other Fortune 20 companies in the retail business, we are in a very large-scale, multi-year transition. Part of that transition is the adoption of public cloud. Our adoption of the public cloud is not about acquiring more compute or storage or network. It is about driving innovation and agility. And so the crux of what I'd actually like to talk about today is one small facet about how we're trying to strike the balance between maintaining security and compliance while at the same time allowing our development teams and product teams to drive innovation and agility. So I like to call it the underlying strategy, trust but verify. And as we'll see a little bit later in the presentation, DivvyCloud is a big part of that verification process that allows us to augment a lot of our prescriptive security controls with the ability to detect deviations and act upon them. So earlier this year, we signed a very large agreement with Azure, which now means we are a multi-cloud company. And as it turns out, our early adoption of DivvyCloud, this plays well because they actually span both of the platforms that we currently use, which allows us to make use of a number of different capabilities they provide without additional effort on our part. So from a defense in-depth perspective, our team has to deal with the different security mechanisms provided by each and every one of the clouds that we support. That can be anything from organizational policies that apply to all the subscriptions or projects. It can go all the way down into the network space, firewall rules, routing policies, things of that nature. It can also go down into RBAC policies, all the way down into individual objects with ACLs inside of a bucket. That's an awful lot of work for a company to do. Our defense in depth strategy up to this point has been we use infrastructure as code to automate as much of that as possible. We create templates. We provide those templates in two distinct different forms to our development teams. One form is kind of a self-service portal where the development teams can go in and adopt a blueprint, and the templates will create their infrastructure and put all the cloud provider security controls in place that allows them to adhere to our corporate policies and how things need to be configured. The second thing is they can actually pick up those templates and actually modify and make changes to those templates, because not everything you do in an enterprise is going to be cookie cutter. So if you're trying to drive innovation and agility, people are going to begin to adopt cloud services in ways that you could not foresee and build into blueprints through a self-service portal. So this is actually where DivvyCloud really plays well as part of our strategy, because if we're not actually going to be able to prescribe every aspect of how the security controls are put in place, we need a safety net to verify that when they combine them in new and unique ways, that they're actually conforming to our policies. So those policies actually are captured within DivvyCloud as well as our infrastructure as code. If you look at DivvyCloud, DivvyCloud now spans both of our cloud platforms. Underneath the cover, DivvyCloud is actually using the very same public APIs that you use when you're provisioning your resources. It's using that along with an event-based mechanism to detect changes to your infrastructure as it's taking place. It ingests that data in, it unifies it across your platform, and then it analyzes it against your policies. Those policies actually are now that verification process, because up to this point, it's your CI/CD pipeline that has been using the templates to deploy your resources. Things that you actually find out in practice are teams are either modifying those and don't understand why certain changes to the templates don't adhere to policy, right? So they go out of compliance. Or you can occasionally have teams that aren't even aware that those policies are there and they'll make changes, right? So you need a way of detecting those out-of-band changes and be able to rectify them. And this is where the actions portion of that life cycle comes into place. Effectively, our strategy is kind of twofold. We kind of take some of the actions are simply to notify us that a change has taken place that is no longer in compliance so that we can reach out to the development teams and have them make the requisite changes, right? And that's usually when there is no serious near-term risk to the business. The second one is if they've actually breached one of the critical policies, we will actually have DivvyCloud, its bot, actually force the resource back into compliance by making changes to the RBAC policy or the ACL or whatever, right? When we began the journey, we had an eye towards, we have all these compliance regimes, and we were of the mindset we were going to actually have to do an awful lot of lifting on our own part to adhere to those policies. When we adopted Divvy, they came on board with a strategy to give us a whole suite of policies and bots that adhered to that could test our adherence to the compliance regimes. And that has been a huge, huge boon to us so that we don't actually have to spend as much time doing that. It also frees us up to be able to create custom policies that are unique to our decisions about how we want to manage our infrastructure, whether it be security or from an operational and OpEx perspective. So Divvy actually, the bots break into two parts. Those that are focused on compliance and security, those that we're using to enforce operational practices, whether it's to optimize our costs or just because we've chosen which services we want to choose to use at a particular place or in a particular region, right? So if you look at the slide, we have built out about 150 policies up to this point in time. Those policies break across the security and the operations aspects, as you can see. We've leaned in a lot to security. Those can either drive notifications to the teams or they can take remediating actions to bring things back into compliance. Up there I've shown a couple of places where we spent a lot of time focusing on access policies to resources. A big thing that we were very much concerned with was data loss and IP loss. And so a lot of the policies of the 150 policies, a lot of those are weighted to detect any kind of exposure to a risk that would cause data exfiltration from the enterprise. And when you look at Divvy, we've been working hand in hand with Divvy to try and collapse the time period between the change, the detection, and the notification. We are now trying to drive it down to under 30 seconds. Now, we balance that because not everything and not every policy is critical to the business, right? So we can suffer a little bit of latency on some of them, but other ones are pretty critical to us. So as you can see out there in the slide in the bottom right-hand corner, some of them are measured in the minutes, others are in the second, and that's so that we can balance the amount of compute capacity that we have to dedicate to DivvyCloud and its ability to act and respond and report. The other thing that isn't in the slides is DivvyCloud gives you a very rich reporting dashboard mechanism to be able to look at not just a unique set of resources, but actually your entire estate across your multitude of clouds that you may have adopted, right? So that actually gives you a lens up into your executive suite as to how you're complying with your security best practices. The other thing that I like about Divvy is that the things that keep me up at night are if someone managed to get escalated privileges into one of our clouds, that provides them the ability to manipulate RBAC policies and other things. Detecting that takes time and effort. DivvyCloud, on the other hand, operates in an entirely different plane. So you have like a separation of duties between these two. So they may have compromised a credential to a subscription or a project, but DivvyCloud is there actually overseeing your resources, and they don't actually have any access to DivvyCloud. So DivvyCloud can sit there, and every time they make a change, if it's detected, the policy will come back in and replace that and close the access back down. So the goal is to make it very difficult for someone like that to actually have any real period of time to actually be able to exfiltrate any IP or data or things of that nature. So I would say that our journey with DivvyCloud has been a very positive influence. It's really raised the confidence of our team and our organization about our ability to strike the balance between innovation and agility against compliance and security. And that's always a difficult balance. All too often you try and come in with very highly prescriptive policies and procedures, which kind of slows down your ability to make changes through many gated processes. We've been able to loosen up those gates to give our teams, in kind of the adoption of a DevOps framework, more ability to make more changes more quickly to drive innovation, while at the same time having that verification as a backstop if they should ever drift out of band, right? So with that, I'll kind of open it up with the questions. It's going to be pretty difficult. I guess there are no mics. Could you just? There's
a lot of talks as to what you have to set up first. Do you have to set up the Azure policies, or are you able to bring in Divvy and have them drop down the policies you need according to like this,
okay,
or like CSA? Which one is like the chicken?
Yeah. So the question is, do you need to do the policy work inside the cloud, or can you just allow DivvyCloud to do that? DivvyCloud is not going to configure your org policies and things of that nature. You want to go and do that work first. What Divvy does is it actually does the verification to make sure that once you've established those policies, that they're not tampered with, right? That they don't drift, right? And some of that drift is you can have breakdown in policies and procedures or just knowledge. The truth of the matter is the cloud is relatively new to many development teams, so they don't know what they don't know. The nice thing is, like in a dev environment where you have these policies firing, it's feedback to them to let them know that they've deviated from policy, which will cause them to ask questions, which increases their knowledge base, which actually matures your organization much quicker. Excuse me.
Two questions. One, how often do you guys review the current policies based on the way the cloud is changing? To number one is security, number two is operations. How often do you do that?
Okay. So the question is, how often do we go back and review our policies? So the pragmatic answer to that is there is an ever-increasing number of cloud services that are made available by each one of your cloud providers. As we open those services up for use by our development teams, we typically have already looked at them and put policies in place. As new features are added, we have to go back and re-groom the policies to make sure that there are no gaps, right? Actually, no. As we are onboarding a service, a cloud service, then we do it then. Generally, as they introduce new features, we'll take a quick look at the feature and determine whether or not there's any additional policies that we need. If there is a need for a policy, we often work with DivvyCloud to help them help us, right? Because if we don't have to write the policy, that's actually good for us. We'd much rather have them write the policy and we simply adopt it.
Does that slow down the process of deployment then, if you're reviewing it during when a new request is put in?
So the question is, does that slow the process down? I don't believe that actually slows the process down. We would not necessarily, if we've already deployed a service and it's out in use, any changes to it, we would just be adding the policies in time, right? We wouldn't stop anybody from using it or continuing to make use of it. Actually, I think I need to be fair to the other people. Sorry.
I'm curious how this, like the pricing model and how it plays towards MSPs. Is this something that we can use as an MSP for multiple?
So I don't know the pricing, but these people right here can answer that. And by the way, the DivvyCloud booth is right down the aisle.
So, when did you guys know you needed something like DivvyCloud and you evaluate other companies? Or was there some kind of moment that you said, oh my God, we need something like this?
Yeah. So the question was, when did we realize the need for something like DivvyCloud? As it turns out, I'm a relatively new hire to Kroger. I've been there just about 2 years. My prior company, I worked for them for over 20 years. The last 8 years of that was basically taking them into the cloud. It was during that migration, very early on, that it became really evident that the models that we typically relied on for security within the data center, right, wouldn't transition well into the cloud. It wasn't that they were broken, it was a different kind of thing. The velocity of change is much higher, right? And the velocity of change by your cloud provider is also much, much higher as well. So when you're dealing with that, you begin to realize that there are these, I like to call them, I don't know, if you've ever been to London, right, and you go to the subway, they're blaring over the thing, mind the gap. And so I had this vision in my mind. There was a gap between the data center and how we manage security there and the cloud. And that was my biggest fear, was what was in the gap and how was I going to fall into it. And the essence of that is, when you're changing things at an extremely high velocity because you're trying to drive agility and innovation, you don't have enough eyeballs, right? You just don't have enough eyeballs to do it. My original company, we started writing the bots ourselves, but to your point, how do you keep up, right? So DivvyCloud at that time, I don't think actually existed. If they had, I would have happily bought their product. So it's really the experience of knowing that you're vulnerable because of the speed of change, and no matter how much prescriptive controls you put into your CI/CD pipeline, anybody with access to a console and can get escalated privileges can actually undo your policies. Whether it's malicious or just out of ignorance, right? So that's kind of the critical point is you begin to realize that, and then you want a tool to help you detect that and remediate it in the shortest possible time. And with that, I think my time is up, and I want to be respectful of the next presenter. Thank you very much.